I don't even know what I'm. Hey, Wednesday, Business Pants. That's Matt Mascardi giggling. I'm Damian Rollis. We are Free Flow Media.
Yeah. It's funny. Your intros are fantastic.
Thank you. I'm a little like I'm scrambled today because I got sucked into the impeachment trials. I'm kind of over caffeinated and under caffeinated at the same time. I don't know what the hell's going on, Matt. What's going on? I know your kids are throwing up all over the house. So.
Yeah, no, there's not that much of that
Okay.
thankfully,
So
but it ain't great. It's not happy times in Shangri-La. I'll just say that.
Okay. It's November 20th, 2019. We are, this is Business Pants, where we make corporate news less sucky, right? We come at it.
We hit it with the less suck stick.
Yeah. Today is Latina Equal Pay Day. So we'll get to that later. Let's go to the agenda.
Let's do it.
We have a few fun things in dystopia, mostly talking about AI, really, and autonomous shit. Basically, the takeaway is that people are the problem. People are getting in the way of AI, Matt. We go inside the pants into look at our own industry and talk more about women in honor of Latina Equal Pay Day. We have a bunch of biz nuggets. I don't need to explain that. We have a new category, new segment today. Inspired by one of our listeners, Matt is going to define something for you, which I'm looking forward to. He's going to define proxy voting, I believe. And then Matt's going to make something for us.
All of those things that you said are totally true.
Thanks for the affirmation. I say we begin this thing.
All right, let's get at it.
Start the clock on dystopia. 6 minutes on the clock. Dystopia. Two interesting reports. First, a new study by the Brookings Institution suggests that white-collar professionals may be more exposed to the changes brought by AI than previously predicted. The report found that holders of bachelor's degrees will be 5 times more exposed to AI than workers with just a high school degree. It also found that AI will be a significant factor in the future work lives of relatively well-paid managers, supervisors, and analysts, and it's affecting mostly the fields of business, technology, and finance. So that's probably most of the people listening to this show.
Makes AI sound a little like UV radiation, though. I mean, exposed to high degrees of AI-ness.
If you're losing your job, you're exposed to something negative, I suppose.
This is kind of inevitable, actually, because a lot of white-collar work is rote, automatable work.
What does it say about the college degrees we're getting? I mean, that's what we're set up to do, is just...
I'll tell you what. I taught... I've been asked to do like classes for business schools on ESG, and I did one in Boston, and a student stood up and said, I want to get a job in finance doing ESG. What do I need to do? And my answer was, learn to write, because almost everything else is going to get automated out of existence, and no one can write anymore.
Yeah. Creative problem solving, thinking on your feet, writing, all things that it will take AI a long time to...
Yeah, we're just buying time. I mean,
right.
But
we're buying time, but we're going to have more, more Netflix, Disney Pluses, all those. So we're good. We're good.
plenty of ways to waste it.
Yeah. All right. Second, autonomous driving, self-driving. That's the other story in dystopia. Okay, to start, I know you like this story, Matt. According to the CEO of Pony.ai, a self-driving startup based in Silicon Valley in China.
Great name for a company, by the way.
Pony.ai. This is what the CEO said. Autonomous driving is hard, especially when irrational factors come into play.
Now, let's be clear.
Yeah.
The factors he's talking about
are
humans.
Right. Yeah. Irrational equals human behavior, essentially. Right.
That's what I love about this. I mean, I know it's pony.ai, but I mentally just said that was a Mark Zuckerberg quote, and it explains so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, fundamentally, I don't think I think that quote sums up the whole big tech problem. It's like everything would be great if people weren't so people-y.
People get out of the way.
Yeah. If y'all would just get out of our way and stop being human for like a nanosecond, we could algorithmicize everything.
But I think they're doing a good job of sort of socially engineering that anyway, right? They're kind of, I feel like they're kind of, with things like Google Maps and whatever. I think they're doing a good job getting the irrational out of humans.
Yeah. I mean, mostly I feel like it's been a 30-year play to anesthetize humans with things like Disney Plus and Netflix and television. So,
all the things I love.
I mean, literally everything that's enjoyable.
All right. And this is, and I don't know if this is a coincidence, but that first story speaks directly to this story. Yesterday, a U.S. safety agency said the primary cause of a fatal accident involving a self-driving Uber in 2018 was the safety driver's failure to monitor the road, with Uber's inadequate safety culture also listed as a contributing factor. So here's the story. The safety driver, and who knew there's a safety driver in a self-driving car, but we're not going to waste time on that. Okay, here we go. The safety driver had taken a cell phone from her bag, placed it below the dashboard, and was streaming The Voice right before the crash, okay? In the 31-minute journey, she spent 34% of her time looking at her phone, with one glance lasting 26 seconds. Her final glance was 6 seconds right before impact, and the safety board also placed cause on the victim, right, Matt? The victim.
Nothing like victim shaming.
Noting that she had a very high level of meth in her body. So there you go. The driver and the victim are at fault for Uber's self-driving crash.
Do you think Uber and Pony.ai are high-fiving right now?
High-fiving high levels of meth? I'm impressed. Here's something I didn't know. I've never taken meth, but the woman, she was on a bike at the time, so I didn't know with a very high level of meth in your body, you could be riding a bike. I'm impressed by that.
I think
is that a good takeaway?
I think this whole thing, the takeaway for me is there needs to be a new big tech business hashtag that is "You're the problem."
I will add that the National Transportation Safety Board said regulators need to do more. So, maybe this is good news, Matt. Maybe we can solve this before it becomes a crisis, unlike what's happening with social media.
In the era of accountability, it's nice to know that every company has found a way to blame humanity, regulators, victims, whoever else.
Especially people with,
I mean, whew.
Especially people with a very high level of meth in their body. All right, let's move forward. We're gonna go back inside the pants, and for you, Dan Evans, what that category is meant to mean is that this is where we cover topics that are from our old industry of financial analysis, ESG.
You're so eloquent when you talk about what we did for 20 years.
Inside the pants, referring to inside the business pants. Okay, so let's not get weird here. All right, so let me start the clock. 3 minutes on the clock. Today is Latina Equal Pay Day, a day that marks how much Latinas must work to earn the same amount their white male counterparts earn in just 1 year. So to be specific, a Latina had to work all of 2018 and 11 months into 2019 to this day to earn what her white male counterpart earned in 2018 alone.
Wait, you're just making me sad? Is that what this segment is just? Sadness?
Well, look, it equates to sadness, but once again, this is fact-based snark. Okay,
fact-based sadness. We did a study once upon a time back at the mothership, and we looked at financial companies, we got as much data. Shout out to Gaia Mazzucchelli, who did the study.
Love Guy.
Won an award for the study, no less. She pulled all this data from financial institutions about the gender makeup of their management and their workforce, and she basically found that it was only 90 companies she could get globally, but of those companies, like 90% of them had more women in the workforce than you would expect, but then simultaneously, like 90% of them had less women in management than you would expect, because she was looking at like demographic data, like how many women would you expect a company to have? They would have to have bachelor's degrees or master's degrees. They would have to, work in finance, all that kind of stuff.
I'm glad you raised that, because another story I have in honor of Latina Equal Pay Day is how impossible it is for women to be in management alone, let alone be a CEO. So Norwegian Air, I'm using Norwegian Air as an example here to illustrate this point. Norwegian Air has just appointed Jacob Schramm as its new CEO, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mr. Schramm does not have a background in aviation. Right? I mean, that's the guy they appoint. And this is from a country that mandates 40% of every board consist of women. So there obviously are women to hire, but I mean, it speaks to the point. They're just
not in aviation.
Yeah. So for this story, I thought, well, I'm going to go look at the management at a bunch of Norwegian airlines, and believe it or not, there are a bunch of Norwegian airlines. Thinking like, okay, I'll find a woman. A woman to recommend, right, to hire. Here's the thing. It's all dudes. Like, there are no women in management to elevate to CEO, because they're just dudes.
But this is the fundamental problem with the conversation about women on boards, like, which I'm going to kind of talk about later. But when you don't elevate any women inside the company, how do you expect to put them on boards? It doesn't even have to be women. It could be anybody.
Yeah.
So thank you for concluding this sadness segment. Can we go to whatever's next?
Yes. All right. A little early today, but it's time for Biz Nuggets. We're kind of, we're mixing up our order a little bit today. So let's talk Biz Nuggets, Matt.
Nug me. I'll never say that again, by the way.
Running counter, 5 minutes for Biz Nuggets, everybody. Running counter to our story on Monday of the closure of two of the U.S.'s biggest coal plants, China is raising its coal-fired power capacity by 43 gigawatts, in contrast to the rest of the world where coal-fired power capacity fell 8 gigawatts. So you see that the world lowering 8, China going up 43. In fact, to sweeten the coal stain, China has another 121 gigawatts under construction. So it's really a coal boom in China, Matt.
Yeah, this is sort of a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, It's a problem. It's a problem if you want to live on the planet 20 years from now. So it's not really a problem now, I guess. But there must be a tremendous amount of capex going in. When you build like a utility, like a coal-fired power plant, you're plunking a lot of money down, and it needs to last you like 20 or 30 years. So it's not like they're building it and they light it on fire and then they're done. And it's like 30 years of this. Is anybody there saying, yeah, this won't work actually 30 years from now? Maybe we shouldn't build it.
Yeah, but in 30 years from now, Disney Plus might suck, so who cares?
Everyone's on TikTok anyway.
China there's also reports that China could launch its own digital currency within the next year. What do you think about that?
I love it.
You do?
Yeah, I mean, if you can track your people in another way, why not?
Okay. China's foreign ministry. Yeah.
At this point, can we just agree that China and Facebook are the same thing?
Oh, wow. I like this. Keep going.
I mean, I don't know about Facebook's energy usage. They currently aren't building coal fire plants, but they are sort of at the center of the downfall of modern civilization, in as much as they've figured out a way to connect humanity and manipulate it accidentally while making a buck off of it.
And they're run by dictators.
And they're both run by effectively a dictator.
People have
And
no say.
They
in what's
both
going
want to
on.
know everything about the people who live there or use it, right?
Right.
And now they're both getting into fictional currencies.
I like this.
Where do these
Let's get
parallels
back to this.
stop?
I like this.
I'm just going to
Facebook
call it
equals
China Book from now on.
Facebook equals China. I like this. All right. Our next biz nugget. Speaking of nuggets, vegans have filed a class action suit accusing Burger King of cooking its plant-based Impossible Whoppers on the same grills as beef products, predicted right here a while ago by our very own Matt Moscardi.
This is inevitable.
Why? Why does it have to be inevitable? Get another grill.
Well, because they're not going to. There's no way Burger King is going to. This gets to the central point of who's buying these things. It's not vegans who are going to buy them.
Yeah,
It's
probably
not
not
even
anymore.
vegetarians. If you care about meat intake, Burger King is not going to like build a second grill in every one of its franchises that are individually owned and operated anyway.
Probably right. Especially in
to
Kentucky.
cook your vegan burger.
Yeah, it's mostly for dopes like me who's on a road trip with my kids, and we have to stop at Burger King, and I was like, oh, that sounds like it's healthier. I don't know.
This was inevitable, and Burger King won't be last. Hot take: watch out, everybody else who's gotten on the meatless meat train. Like, there's enough people who care that the lawsuits are going to come.
In a quick sexist Fisher update, our favorite sexist of the year, Kenny Boy Fisher from Fisher Investments, the Policeman's Annuity and Benefit Fund of Chicago is the latest organization to sever ties with Fisher Investments, pulling $67 million. So that brings the total to over $3 billion pulled because of Ken Fisher's lewd mouth. Also, in whiny billionaire talk, Lloyd Blankfein, our favorite Goldman Sachs CEO and chair, former CEO and chair, he's staying in the please hate me game. First, he's doubling down on his clever racism by suggesting with his fight with Senator Warren that if I could, I would just bury the hatchet. Second, when confronted on CNBC if he thought that corporate leaders made too much money, he fired back to the reporter, do you think television reporters make too much money? I do.
I just want to remind all of our viewers that Lloyd Blankfein did suggest Goldman Sachs was doing God's work. Apparently that includes getting sued by the SEC for manipulating or misleading selling. But
no biggie, Matt. Finally, I know we're over time, but I have to add this story, that our favorite 12-second pile of guac E. coli story. Chipotle is planning to put Chipotlanes in half of the restaurants under construction and promises it will take only 12 seconds to get you your food, Matt. Only 12 seconds.
Number one, I hate puns. I love the name Chipotlanes. Excellent work, Chipotle.
Yeah.
Number two, I cannot, I used to love Chipotle. I cannot erase the stigma of E. coli. So all I hear is, quick, we can give you your E. coli faster than we could before.
Well, maybe if it takes only 12 seconds, they'll forget to reach into the E. coli bag, man. All right, let's put our Biz Nugget plate in the dishwasher. Let's get out. Let's get out of Biz Nuggets. Get out. Let's go to viewer mail, Biz Mail. Again, this is a new segment. This is a segment where we will define a financial term for you, essentially. This is a segment suggested by a listener, Dan Evans, a fine British gentleman living in France. So thank you, Dan. So today, what are we going to define today, Matt?
So we're just going to go really quickly over what a proxy vote is.
All right, 3 minutes on the clock for a proxy vote.
It won't even take 3 minutes.
It already sounds confusing.
It's really, really simple.
Okay.
So Jim Cramer, actually, in his book, Real Money from, I think it was 2005, it's one of my favorite books of all time, says when you buy a stock, really the only thing you're entitled to is a dividend if they pay it and a vote on a proxy if they give it. So So, and then an OJ and a Danish at the shareholder meeting, which if you wanted to attend. So,
Sounds very 1980s.
Small
Danish
win.
reference.
When you buy a share of stock, most stocks you're entitled to a vote for each one of the shares that you buy. Every shareholder, and this is in general, right? Not all companies are structured this way, but every shareholder gets to vote what's called their proxy.
What does that mean? Can you just go? What is that? What is a proxy?
So what you end up doing is every year or every couple of years, every company is different in this way, but electors, a board of directors will come up for a vote, or someone will want to change the auditor, or there'll be company business effectively at the highest level.
Yeah, approve executive pay.
That's often annual. In Facebook's case, it's every 3 years and pointless. But you basically can take your share, and you get a little card in the mail, and you fill out yes, no, abstain. Like you can skip voting entirely for some things, and you send it back, or you do this online, and they register your vote, and then at the end of the voting session, they see, well, which directors got majority shareholder approval? Did shareholders approve the auditor? Did shareholders approve pay? All of these votes, a proxy vote in the U.S. is an advisory vote. It is not like...
which means it's not binding and it does nothing.
It's not like electing a president, which is also
Toothless.
Sort of meaningless thanks to the Electoral College. But it is a lot... This is even more meaningless because it doesn't actually link directly to, like, if there are situations in which shareholders say, 60% of shareholders will say we don't want this director approved as a director for this year, and they can stay as director anyway.
Right, a zombie director.
When I say proxy voting, I'm talking about the act of you own a share of that company. You actually have an advisory vote in how certain aspects of that company work.
All right. I'm still a little confused, but that was your first attempt at a definition. I'm going to guess that a lot of our listeners didn't even know that this was a thing, that when you own shares in the stock market, that you can actually have a say in company doings, right?
So this is a really big thing right now, too.
Yeah.
Because the SEC chair just rammed through a regulation. Well, they amended. They basically updated, saying that and he using fake letters from people like.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Let's talk more about this tomorrow. All right.
Yeah. I want to come back to this, but I'm going to give you a case study in proxy voting right now. So
let's go right to Matt Makes. I'm going to start the clock. 6 minutes on the clock, Matt. Let's go to Matt Makes.
Matt makes a board rant.
Okay.
This is basically version 5. It's a continuation of last week. This discussion about boards. So I want to go back to the company that I talked about last week. If you didn't listen to last week, you can either catch it on YouTube, you can download the podcast. It's all over the place. But I'm talking about Fidelity National Financial, a title insurance company. I picked them last week because they're basically an undiverse, heavily white board, and I was trying to get a board seat and I was maximizing my possibilities, the potential that I'd actually get one. And as a white male in his 40s, it seemed easier to go for a company like Fidelity. So the board, if you're watching the stream or on YouTube now,
which you should be,
which please do.
Hopefully you are.
You can see the whiteness of the current board.
Very
there's only
white,
one person on the board, a Richard Massey, whose picture I cannot find, but the probability that he's white is very high.
Very high.
I don't know. I have to say I don't know. I did have to find.
You're listening, Dick Massey. Give us a call. Tell us if you're white. That's what we want to know.
I did happen to find a picture from another board member, Ron Lane, Daniel Ron Lane, from 1984 Olympic Games. That's the only picture I could find.
He looks like he's 90 even then. I mean,
I don't. He's a real estate developer in L.A. It's a thing. I
Okay.
don't know.
no offense, Ron.
But here's where I don't want to castigate the company, because what I actually want to get to is how the board came to be like this.
Okay.
Right? That's the point. So Fidelity National Financial, like almost every company, has a nominating committee on the board. Effectively, it's a small committee on the board who chooses who the next board members are going to be, and they nominate them so that shareholders can then vote on them.
Got it.
The nominating committee happens to be Rich Dick Massey and Shea, Peter Shea. Okay, who
Just two people?
just two people.
That's odd.
Now Massey, we don't know if he's white. Now let's just guess that he is. Between me and you, we're going to guess that he is.
white.
So probably a not very
Probably
diverse nominating committee. Just probably. Okay.
Yeah.
The nominating committee's job is to make a recommendation to the board with respect to filling vacancies of committees or board members, and they say that they should consider, quote, as part of their charter, they are considering the responsibilities, the qualifications, and the application of the committee charter, as well as other factors it deems appropriate in choosing candidates. Okay.
Okay.
So they just want qualified, experienced people. Now, this past year, this was an opportunity in 2019. It was an opportunity for shareholders to use those proxies because there were board members up for re-election. This was a chance for shareholders to effectively yell at the nominating committee, that is Shea and Massey, and say, we don't like how white and non-diverse your board is. There's one woman. There was two women. One of them left. We don't know why. Janet Kerr, if you're listening, I really need to talk to you about what it was like on Fidelity National Financial Board.
Special alert. I have confirmation from the nndb.com website. Richard Massey, race or ethnicity is listed as white.
Oh, all right. Good guessing.
There you go.
I'm shocked.
Not guessing. Yeah, okay.
Let me
All right,
just
keep
say
going.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the crazy thing. Massey, who is on the nominating committee, who chairs the nominating committee, is up for a vote in 2019. If you're an investor and you do not like the whiteness, lack of women, like entrenchment of this board, this is the year you can yell at the nominating committee member who made this all possible.
Yeah.
There were 3 members of the board up for a vote this year: Thompson, Lane, and Massey. Now, Lane and Thompson were on the board for like 25 plus years, and Massey slightly less. This is what the vote results were. Are you ready for this? The vote results.
Okay, so it already happened, the meeting.
It already happened, the meeting.
Okay.
There was some pushback against all 3 of them, but they got 85% or more of the vote, the proxy vote.
But I will, to put it a little bit into context, in my old life, any no vote above 10% was flagged for being way too high.
It is high. Investors didn't like this. But here's the thing. If you are an individual investor, the chances that you're going out and buying Fidelity National Financial as a company, pretty low. Pretty low. But if you are an investor in Vanguard, T. Rowe Price, Principal Global Investors Funds, BlackRock Funds, Alliance Bernstein Funds, if you own a mutual fund, and there's Wells Fargo owns them, State Street owns them, you own a mutual fund or ETF of any of those, you might actually hold Fidelity National Financial.
Right.
And those fund managers are voting on your behalf, okay? Here's where it gets crazy. I'm out of time, but here's where it gets crazy. I'll move faster. Because all of these companies, they have effectively policies to deal with how they vote proxies on your behalf. They have policies that cover board composition. BlackRock actually came out in the Wall Street Journal and said companies should have at least 2 female directors. That's what BlackRock said in February of, was it last year? I think it was February of last year or this year. here is what they did. Okay?
Okay.
Vanguard. 4. They were all for all the directors. Very happy to reelect
4.
them. Yes
Sure.
to say on pay.
Yeah.
Take a guess. T. Rowe Price. What do you think?
4.
False. They were the
Oh.
one company
Yeah.
who was aggressively against.
Why? Do we know why?
We don't know why, but we do know that in their policy, they actually outsource their proxy voting to ISS,
Okay.
a company that I'm going to come back to tomorrow because there's a big conversation happening in small circles of people who don't really know how to speak English about proxy advisory.
Okay.
Principal Global Investors, no information.
All right.
Have no idea. Can't find anything about it. BlackRock, AllianceBernstein, all yes.
Oh, yes.
BlackRock, this year you said company board should have 2 women on it. This year you voted all yes in all your funds for a company with 1 woman on it that's all white.
I wonder why. I wonder how will they respond to that?
How will they respond to that? Who knows?
Yeah,
The
They're not
point
gonna
here
respond.
is
yeah.
that shareholding is actually a surprisingly democratic process. And
Mhm.
individual shareholders have largely outsourced their vote to someone else. If you don't like how your share gets voted, you can do something about it by writing to the manager of the fund. You can email them. You can
Sure.
complain. And people like us can keep asking why a company like BlackRock, who says every company should have at least 2 female directors, and a company like Vanguard, who says we believe good governance begins with a great board of directors, where they, including diversity, skills, personal characteristics, they're all against entrenchment and stuff like that. Why they are happy to vote for 3 dudes, 2 of whom have been on the board for 25 years or more already.
I think what Matt's saying to those people is wake up, people.
Time to wake up.
Wake up and do your job.
It's time to actually do something you're paid to do.
Thanks, Matt. Once again, woefully over the allotted time limit.
You
but
can't give me
yet-
time, apparently. I'm just
Yet, as always, informational and lovely. That's all that really counts.
lovely. Hey,
let's
if
meet
you're
up
watching
tomorrow.
this,
Do this again.
subscribe. There's a button somewhere. Subscribe. If you're on podcasts, subscribe. Rate us. Give us 5 stars. 1 star. I don't care. Taz D, our biggest fan. If you're listening, we know you've already given us 5 stars. Give it to us again.
Yeah.
We could use the help. Send this to your friend. Eat lunch with us tomorrow.
Yeah.
Do all those things.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.